Welcome. Today I'm going to demonstrate making a segmented bowl. I've already laid out the base for the bowl by cutting triangular pieces of different species and gluing them together edge to edge to form the base of the bowl. Then the base is glued to a plywood faceplate. There's a piece of craft paper in between the bowl base and the faceplate, which is glued in place. The reason for the craft paper is when you're done turning on the faceplate, you can easily remove the bowl from the faceplate by prying it off of the craft paper. The faceplate will be reused time and time again. The reason for the red line on the faceplate is it indicates how far the screws project into the plywood through the steel faceplate on the lathe. So after this base is removed, this faceplate can again be flattened and reused again and again until you get down to the point where you're near the red line. Then instead of throwing it out, just glue another piece of plywood to it, round it off, flatten it out, and continue on using that faceplate. So I've rounded off the base of the bowl and flattened the face of it so it's ready now to have the first ring of the bowl attached to it. So I've made a series of rings that will be added, stacked on top of each other and added to the bowl so that eventually the bowl will be somewhere around that high. What I've done is I've used different species of wood, and actually to be a little funky on this one, I've also used different numbers of segments for each ring so that they don't match up exactly when the bowl is turned. I just wanted to see how that would come out. This ring is made out of zebra wood. That will be the first one attached to the base of the bowl. That will be glued in place and rough shaped before the next ring is added to it. The next ring is made of American chestnut and red oak. The next two rings will be placed so that they make a pattern similar to that. They are made out of yellow birch and black walnut. The next ring is another kind of a funky piece of wood I've got. It's wormy butternut, and I'm going to impregnate that with colored epoxy to fill in the holes, and we'll see how that comes out. And then the top ring will be made of yellow heart. So I have put the first ring on the base. The first ring is the zebra wood. It's been rough turned to take off the excess weight and balance it. The face has been flattened. The next piece to go on will be the ring made of red oak and chestnut. I'll glue that on similar to the way I did the other one, and when it's glued, we'll just continue on out until we've got the rings shaped and in place, rough shaped and in place the way we want them. Okay, we put the second ring on, roughed it out, checked it for flatness, so we're ready to move on to ring number 3. Okay, I've got the first black walnut and yellow birch ring on. I'm ready to add the next one to it. Now before I put any more rings on it, I'm going to shape some of the inside out so I don't have to reach so far inside to do the whole thing all at once. So the rings have all been assembled and glued up, and now we're ready to start the final shaping of the bowl. This outer ring is yellow heart, and I mentioned earlier about using wormy butternut. This ring here is a layer of wormy butternut that I have infused with epoxy to fill in the wormholes and add some strength and color to the ring. Now I'm going to demonstrate the use of my home-built steadyrest. That looks like that. Sits on the lathe this way. This piece here slides in the slot of the lathe bed. This piece here is loose, held in place by these two nuts, bolts with wing nuts, and that's used to tighten it up against the bottom of the lathe bed. This piece and this piece and these pieces are all glued together in a solid piece. So we'll slide it into the lathe bed. Once it's in place, tighten up on those wing nuts to hold it in place so it doesn't move. These pieces here are made so they can slide in and out. And to keep the piece from vibrating if it's being pushed offline when you're turning it, to keep it from wobbling. I like to set the wheels so that they're not touching it, maybe just like a 64th of an inch away from it, so that if you do push it offline, it will keep it from wobbling, but they're not running against the surface of it all the time and damaging the surface. So the wheels on this are suitcase wheels that I got on Amazon. So I have the steadyrest in place. So the wheels aren't touching the surface of the workpiece, but they're close enough that if I push too hard when I'm turning the inside of it, it will contact the wheel and keep the piece from wobbling. I'm going to do some of the initial shaping on the inside with a hook tool. Now I'm going to do some final shaping with a side scraper. So the bolt has been turned and sanded both inside and out except for the outside bottom. That's what the bottom looks like after it came off of the faceplate, so now I have to turn that and shape that, polish it up so it looks nice. I do that by using what I call a donut chuck, which is a faceplate padded with a series of rings on the front to help center the bowl that's held against the donut, the faceplate, this way. It's held in place by a series of rings with bolts that are threaded rods that go through these holes and through the rings and clamp it down onto the faceplate. The rings look somewhat like this. These holes in the back of the ring all line up with the holes in the faceplate, and this different size depends on what the size of the piece is that you're turning. This is the ring that will be used to hold this bowl against the faceplate. These carriage bolts fit through this ring and then through the holes in the faceplate, and they're held in place and tightened up with wing nuts to hold the piece in place. So the bolts are just loosely put in place. Now the bowl is centered on the rings that are showing on the faceplate to initially center it. So the bolts are inserted through the ring and then through the faceplate and held in place with wing nuts. The bowl is roughly centered on the rings on the faceplate, and then the nuts are then tightened up to hold the bowl basically in place until it can be centered for final turning. As you tighten up on the nuts, it pulls down tighter on the ring and holds the bowl tighter against the faceplate. I center the bowl against the faceplate just by using a center punch or some other indicator, and turn the bowl just basically to see that the side fits the bowl so that it spins true. Once it spins true, I tighten down on the nuts. Check it for trueness. It seems to be centered pretty well, so I'll tighten down on the nuts until it's good and tight and can't slip against the faceplate. The padding on the inside of the ring keeps it from damaging the bowl itself. Check it once more for trueness. Check it to spin it and see how we look. I think we're looking pretty good. Now we'll set about removing the craft paper from the bottom and truing it up. Okay, we've got all the craft paper turned off. Now we're just going to recess the bottom a little bit here so that the only part that touches the table is the outer ring. Then we'll dress up the outer side and the outer ring. Okay, so the bottom has been dressed up, turned, flattened, and has a rim put on it. Now we'll sand it. I'm progressing with the sandpaper. I started with 120 grit, then went to 150, 180. Now I'm doing 240 grit. You can do whatever you want, especially the bottom of the bowl doesn't make that much difference because nobody sees that anyway. But I'm trying to dress up the outer edge, blend it in with the sanding on the side. Now I'm going up to 320, and that'll be the last grit I use. Okay, one last finishing touch, and then we're ready to take it off the lathe. So the faceplate for the donut chuck can also be used with a jam chuck to center the bowl for final turning of the lower area that needs to be dressed up after it's taken off of the donut chuck. We'll start with 120. We'll move up through 150, 180, 240, and 320, and then call it a day on the sanding. So here's the bowl completed, signed, and ready for use. Thank you for watching.